I hadn't seen Tyler's brother in 5 years. Last time I visited their place, I was 16, awkward as hell, with braces and a bad haircut. Tyler and I had been best friends since elementary school, and back then, his older brother was just that. Older, cooler. A college guy who barely noticed us except to tell us to shut up when we got too loud playing video games. So when Tyler invited me to spend a weekend at his family's lake house, I didn't think much of it. I needed the break. Grad school was kicking my ass, and the thought of getting out of the city, even for a few days, sounded like heaven. "Is Logan gonna be there?" I asked casually while we were texting about logistics. Tyler replied with a shrug emoji. "Yeah, I think he's off work that weekend. You'll probably see him around." I didn't give it another thought. Not until I pulled up in front of their place late Friday night and the door opened to reveal someone I didn't recognize at first. Logan. He wasn't the same lanky guy the first remembered from high school. He was taller now, broader in the shoulders, his jawline sharper. His hair was shorter, messy in that effortless way, and he had this calm, quiet confidence about him that hit me right in the chest. He opened the door wider and grinned. "You're the friend, huh?" "Yeah," I said, suddenly self-conscious. "Jake." "Right, come in." He took my bag from me like it was nothing, his hand brushing mine for a second, and I tried not to read too much into how warm it was. Tyler was already inside, feet up on the couch, a beer in hand. "About time, man," he said, like we hadn't just seen each other a week ago. "We were about to start a movie without you." The weekend was supposed to be chill. A couple of friends, a lake, some beers, nothing complicated, but things rarely go the way you expect. Especially not when someone starts looking at you like they've been waiting to do it for a long time. Saturday started out easy. We made a lazy breakfast, played cards on the deck, and drank beers way too early in the day. Tyler's tradition whenever we came out here. By noon, we were out by the lake. Tyler jumped in first, cannonballing so hard he nearly soaked the Bluetooth speaker. I eased in more slowly, letting the cold bite at my skin before diving under. Logan didn't come out right away. He showed up an hour later, walking down the path from the house with a towel slung over his shoulder and a shirt that was very much doing nothing to hide what was underneath. I tried not to notice, I really did. But I did. He dropped the shirt on the dock and kicked off his flip-flops like it was nothing, then stood at the edge for a second, squinting against the sun. Tyler noticed too. "Bro, if you're gonna stand there looking majestic, at least do a flip or something." Logan smirked and dove in so cleanly it barely made a splash. When he came up, his hair slicked back and water dripping from his shoulders, I had to look away and pretend like I was suddenly fascinated with a patch of algae by the rocks. That night, after we grilled out and Tyler had one too many drinks, he passed out in the hammock outside like he always did when we came here. I stayed up, sitting on the back porch steps with a blanket around my shoulders, just listening to the quiet. Logan came out with 2 beers. I blinked at him as he handed me one. "Didn't peg you as the type to share." He sat beside me. "Only when it's worth it." It wasn't the words that made me pause. It was the way he said them. Slow, deliberate, his eyes not leaving mine. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind that wasn't awkward, just heavy in a way that made you feel it in your chest. "Can I ask you something?" he said eventually. "Sure." "Were you always this quiet?" I laughed under my breath. "I don't know. Maybe I just didn't have much to say around you." He turned slightly, one knee resting against mine. "Why's that?" I didn't answer right away. The beer suddenly tasted stronger, my throat tighter. "I think I thought you didn't like me." He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say much, but I noticed you." That made me look up. He didn't break eye contact. "Back then, you were just Tyler's friend. Now, I don't know, you seem different." "Different how?" His gaze dropped to my mouth for a second, then back up. "Just different." The air felt charged, and when his hand brushed against mine, he didn't move it away. His hand just rested there. Light, barely touching mine, but enough. Enough that I knew it wasn't an accident. I didn't pull away. I don't even think I breathed. The cicadas buzzed in the trees, and somewhere inside, the old fridge made that low hum I'd always found weirdly comforting. but all I could focus on was the warmth of his skin against mine. "You're not saying anything," Logan murmured. "I'm trying not to overthink." He nodded like he got it. "You always overthink?" I glanced at him. "Don't most people, when their best friend's older brother starts holding their hand on the back porch?" That made him smile. "Fair." He didn't move, though. If anything, his fingers curled slightly, pressing into mine like he was testing the moment, waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked quietly, and that's when I realized my heart was doing something weird. Not racing exactly, but fluttering, like it was trying to catch up to what was happening. "No," I said, "I don't." He leaned back, just a little, the blanket slipping off my shoulder. His eyes flicked there, and then back to mine. "You always come out here with Tyler?" "Every summer since college. He says it resets him." "And does it reset you?" "I don't know what that means." "It means," he said, shifting slightly closer, "you get a weekend to feel like someone else. Or maybe more like yourself, depending on the year." I looked at him, really looked. There was a softness in his face now that I didn't remember from before. Something gentler than the version of him who used to tease Tyler and barely nod at me in the kitchen. And yet here he was, brushing a thumb over the back of my hand like he'd done it 100 times before. "So," I said, "what version of you are you this weekend?" He tilted his head. "The version that finally stopped pretending." That hit me harder than I expected. The porch light buzzed above us. Inside, the old clock chimed once. It was past midnight. Logan didn't let go of my hand. Instead, he looked toward the hammock where Tyler was still snoring softly. "You should probably get some sleep," he said. But he didn't move. "Yeah," I replied. "I probably should." Still didn't move. And neither did he. He was looking at me like he was trying to memorize the exact shape of this moment. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just held onto his hand a little tighter. And he smiled. I eventually made myself go inside. My room at the lakehouse hadn't changed. Same twin beds, same dusty curtains, same chip dresser I used to throw my hoodie on back in high school. It should have felt nostalgic. Instead, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my fingers still tingling from where Logan had touched them. I was wide awake, and I knew it wasn't just the beer. At 2:11 a.m., I know because I checked, there was a soft knock at my door. I didn't say anything, just sat up slowly, the floor cool against my feet as I crossed to open it. Logan stood there, barefoot, in a dark gray t-shirt and gym shorts. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Couldn't sleep," he said quiet. Neither could I, but I didn't say that. Instead, I stepped aside, and he came in. He didn't ask. Just walked past me and sat on the edge of my bed like it was normal. Like this was something we did. The room felt different with him in it. He looked up at me, his voice low. I wasn't gonna do this. I told myself I'd leave it alone. "And now?" He shrugged, eyes flicking up to mine. "Now I can't stop thinking about earlier." I hesitated. "We were drunk." "You weren't. I wasn't either. Not really." There was no point pretending. I'd sobered up the second he touched my hand. He leaned back on his hands, his shirt pulling slightly against his chest. "I don't want to mess things up for you. Or for Tyler." I sat down on the other bed across from him. "Then why are you here?" He paused, like he was searching for the most honest version of his answer. "Because this feels like something I'll regret not trying." That was it. No drama, no big speech. Just that quiet, open confession in the dark. I let it hang there for a second. Let it settle between us. Then I stood and crossed the small space between our beds. I sat beside him, and for a long second, we just sat like that, shoulders barely touching. Then I said, "Okay." He turned slightly. "Okay? You're not the only one who's been thinking about it." The corner of his mouth twitched, like he was trying not to smile too obviously. Yeah, I nodded, but we're still not telling Tyler. He laughed under his breath. God, no. And then, without overthinking it, finally, I leaned in. It was soft, almost hesitant, like we were both afraid the other might pull away, but neither of us did. The kiss didn't rush. It was quiet, like the room itself was holding its breath. His hand found my knee, steady, warm, and I leaned into him like I'd wanted to all day, all summer, maybe longer. It wasn't some wild, passionate movie scene. It was better, slow, curious, the kind of kiss that said, I've been wondering about this for a while and this is okay at the same time. And when he pulled back just a few inches, his eyes didn't move from mine. Still okay? He asked, voice barely a whisper. Yeah, I breathed, more than okay. He exhaled like he'd been holding that in, and then we kissed again, this time a little more certain. A little more yes, this is happening. He reached behind him, pulling the blanket from the other bed and wrapping it around both of us as we lay back on the mattress, shoes still on, mine somewhere else entirely. I kept thinking I'd feel nervous, or guilty, or something, but all I felt was the quiet thrum of his body next to mine, and his fingers tracing circles against my side through my shirt. Eventually, we stopped kissing, but we didn't move apart, we just lay there, our legs tangled, the room dim and quiet except for the creaking of the old house and our breathing. I used to think you were kind of annoying, Logan admitted, his voice low. Gee, thanks. I mean when you were younger, you had that whole know-it-all thing going on. I did not. He glanced at me. You definitely corrected my grammar in front of my friends once. Okay, that sounds familiar. We both laughed, and it was soft, tired, real. Then he reached up and brushed a thumb over my cheek like he was still surprised I was real. I didn't expect this, he said. Same. I don't really know what this is. I don't either, but I don't want to pretend I didn't feel it. That made my throat catch a little. Because, same, we didn't label it, didn't talk about what it meant. Just stayed in that moment, his arm under my head, my fingers laced with his. We didn't sleep much that night, but not because anything happened beyond that. Just because once you cross a line you didn't think existed, you start seeing everything differently. And once someone starts touching you like they mean it, not just physically, but like they actually see you, it's hard to pretend you're still the same person you were before. I woke up to sunlight slicing through the slats of the blinds and the distinct ache in my neck from sleeping half upright, half curled against Logan's chest. His arm was still around me, heavy and warm, and for a second I didn't move, just listened to the sound of his breathing, steady and deep. It felt weirdly natural, like this was something we did, like this was something we were. But of course, the second I sat up, real life came rushing back. Tyler. He was probably still passed out outside, but that wouldn't last. And the moment he came in and saw Logan in my bed, "Shit," I whispered, scrambling to stand. Logan stirred, eyes barely opening. "What's wrong?" "We fell asleep, in here, together." He blinked slowly, and then the realization clicked across his face. Right. I paced once, ran a hand through my hair. "If he walks in and sees this, I'll leave," Logan said, already pushing off the bed. "It's fine." But I hated how quickly he said it, like he'd expected this moment. Like he was used to backing off before he got too close. I didn't stop him though. Just watched as he straightened his shirt, grabbed his phone off the dresser, and slipped out the door without another word. I sat down on the bed, the blanket still warm where he'd been, and told myself this was the smart move. No drama, no awkward questions. We'd had a moment. It didn't have to be anything more. Except, of course, it already was. By the time I made it to the kitchen, Logan was back in his usual rhythm. Coffee brewing, breakfast half prepped, hair damp from a quick shower. Tyler was at the table scrolling his phone, none the wiser. "Sleep okay?" Tyler asked. "Yeah," I said, stealing a glance at Logan. Slept great. He didn't look at me. Just handed me a mug like nothing had happened. No trace of the guy who'd kissed me under the porch light or whispered that he'd been thinking about it for days. I sat at the table and sipped my coffee while the two of them talked about some new kayak they were planning to get. I should have felt relieved, but I just felt invisible. When Tyler left later that morning to pick up more ice and snacks from the gas station down the road, Logan and I were finally alone in the kitchen again. I waited for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, cracking an egg into the skillet. "Yeah. You sure?" "Because last night..." "I'm not pretending that didn't happen," he cut in gently. "I just don't want you to regret it." "I don't." He finally looked at me. "Then say that again when you're not half worried your best friend's gonna walk in and flip out." I hesitated, because he wasn't wrong. But it didn't change the fact that I hadn't stopped thinking about it either. The rest of the day passed in fragments. We went swimming again. We grilled again. Tyler cracked jokes and tossed me beers and argued with Logan about the best way to store firewood. Everything looked the same on the outside, but everything felt different. Every time Logan looked at me and then quickly looked away, I felt it. The space between us that hadn't existed the night before now stretched like a rubber band, tense, waiting to snap. I found myself overthinking everything. Did I say too much? Not enough? Was he regretting it? Was I? The answer to that last question, at least, was no. Not even a little. That night, after Tyler passed out in the hammock again, like clockwork, I sat on the same porch step, arms wrapped around my knees, listening to the hum of cicadas and my own ridiculous heartbeat. I didn't know if Logan would come. I kinda hoped he wouldn't, if only so I wouldn't have to figure out what to say. But around 12:30, the screen door creaked open, and I didn't have to turn to know it was him. He didn't sit right away, just stood behind me, quiet. "Can I?" he asked. I nodded, and he sat down beside me, close but not touching. We sat in silence for a while. I didn't know how to start. I think he didn't either. Then, finally, he said, "I wasn't trying to act like it didn't matter." "I know. I didn't want to make it heavier than it needed to be." That made me turn and look at him. "What if I want it to be heavy?" He blinked at me. "You do?" I nodded, heart suddenly racing. "I've been trying not to. Because of Tyler. And because I didn't think you'd ever see me that way. But last night, it wasn't nothing. Not to me." He looked at me, long and searching, and then exhaled like he'd been holding that breath all day. "It wasn't nothing to me either." This time, I didn't wait. I leaned in, and when he met me halfway, it wasn't hesitant. It wasn't slow. It was the kind of kiss that says, "Okay, this is real now." His hand found the back of my neck, fingers slipping into my hair as he pulled me closer, and everything about the way he kissed me made it clear he'd wanted to do this for a long time. When we finally pulled back, he didn't let go. "I've been thinking about this since the day you walked in yesterday," he said, breathless. "Yeah?" He nodded. "You aren't some kid anymore, and I couldn't stop looking at you." I laughed, a little overwhelmed, a lot relieved. "Same." He rested his forehead against mine. "This is probably really stupid." "Probably," I agreed. "But I don't care." And neither did he. Not when he stood, took my hand and led me inside. Not when he paused in the hallway, checking that Tyler was still out cold. Not when he pushed open the door to his room instead of mine. Not when we finally stopped pretending. Logan's room was darker than mine. The curtains were heavier, the air still warm from the day. He closed the door behind us gently, like he was afraid it might wake the whole world. Neither of us spoke. There wasn't anything left to say. He kissed me again before the light was even off. hands on my waist this time, a little more desperate than before, like now that he'd let himself want this, he couldn't wait another second. And I didn't want him to. I didn't want to pretend I didn't feel everything all at once. We moved to the bed in a blur, kicked off our shoes, pulled at each other's shirts in the half-dark, laughing quietly when one of us got stuck in the blanket. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth or choreographed. But it felt real, like we were making something we hadn't let ourselves believe could exist. Afterward, we lay tangled in each other, our legs wrapped, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle shapes against my shoulder. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "Me either," he said, "but I don't want it to stop." I nodded against his skin. "Okay." We fell asleep like that, the fan spinning lazily above us, our bodies bare under the covers, the lake breeze drifting in through the cracked window. In the morning, we were still tangled up when we heard Tyler's voice in the hallway. "Yo, you guys up?" I panicked for a second, bolting upright, heart hammering. Logan caught my wrist, pulled me gently back down. "He's just knocking," he said. "It's okay." But it wasn't. Not really. Because suddenly, we weren't just two guys figuring something out in the dark. We were real. We were visible. And if Tyler opened that door, I slipped out of bed, tugged on yesterday's shorts, ran fingers through my hair. Logan did the same, moving slower, calmer. When we stepped out, Tyler was already in the kitchen, pouring cereal like nothing had changed. And for a while, we played it off. Ate breakfast, joked about the weather, made plans to hike later. But something was different. I could feel it, and I knew Tyler could too. He looked at us once, then twice. His eyes narrowed just slightly as Logan handed me a mug, our fingers brushing for a little too long. Later that afternoon, while Logan was outside loading gear into the car, Tyler caught me alone on the porch. "So," he said, not looking at me. "You and Logan?" I froze. "What?" He gave me a look. "Come on, man, I've known you forever. I know what your face looks like when you're trying really hard not to show something." I swallowed. Yeah. I guess something's happening." Tyler nodded slowly. "You happy?" I blinked. "Yeah, I think I am." He nodded again, still looking out at the trees. "Then okay." That was it. No drama, no threats, just a pause, a breath, and quiet acceptance. The weekend ended like it always did, with tired packing, a messy trunk, promises to do it again soon. But as Logan and I stood by my car before I left, he reached for my hand. In daylight this time, where anyone could see, and I didn't pull away.